1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, welcome back to Country and Cold Cans. I'm Logan, today with trucker Andy and Kyle. On today's episode, we had the chance to sit down with country artist and fellow North Carolinian Corey Hunt from Corey Hunt and the Wise. We covered a wide range of topics on this episode, from his time in Nashville, touring in Texas, the North Carolina music scene, and much more. It was a great episode, wonderful interview. Be sure to check it out. Give us 5 stars, great review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Click subscribe on your way out. And, if you have any questions, any comments, or any things you want to say to us, there's a link in the description of this podcast where it says click here to leave us a voicemail. We'd love to hear from you. Well, let's get into the interview with Corey Hunt. All right, we're sitting here with Corey Hunt, one of mine and Andy's favorite North Carolina musicians. First, we appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah. No, I'm stoked to be here. This is cool.
So you were actually the first concert that Andy and I went to after starting this podcast 4 years ago. We saw you out in Fuquay, and
oh wow,
we talked to you for a few minutes afterwards, but we had probably consumed a few cold snacks at that show. So I don't know how much of a productive conversation on our end it was, but you were super nice with us. So that made an impact on us. We were like, we got to get him on the show at some point.
That's super cool, man. I guess if Fuquay was at the brewery out there.
Yeah, it was.
Man, that's been a minute because we haven't been back there. It's been a while.
I want to say it was maybe 2019, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. That's probably right. Yeah. I feel like COVID, like everything you lost like 2 years. It seems like to me. 2 years.
Yeah, the COVID thing was weird to me because when we first heard about COVID, I was 25 years old, and then it felt like the world paused, and I suddenly was in my late 20s at the end of it, and now I'm pushing 30, and I was like, I feel like I lost 2 years of my youth.
Yeah. No, I guess in 2020 I was like I was 30, and then so now here I am. I'm like approaching my mid 30s, feeling old and washed up.
Right. So you were saying talking about touring out in Fuquay like that. So that was one thing I did want to ask you, because especially with independent artists, I've always, the way everybody kind of handled that, the lockdown situation where touring would just kind of went away for a little while. So how was it before and then during? How different was it after as well?
So before COVID, we were playing between 150 and 175 shows a year, on average, you know what I mean? And then I'll never forget. So we had went out to Texas for a run at the end of February. And when we were on our way back, we were actually talking about it because, it was all over the news, but the world hadn't shut down yet. And me and my wife were moving. We bought a house, and me and the band were going to take 3 weeks off, so I could get moved in and all that stuff. Well, during that three weeks, actually the week we closed on the house, the lockdown happened. And we went from taking 3 weeks off to essentially the year off, because everything got canceled. All of our spring and summer shows got canceled immediately. And then we rescheduled them all for the fall and winter. But then when we got to fall and winter, they got all canceled too. So we played a handful of private parties towards the end of the year of 2020. But I think in 2020 and 2021, we played 16 shows total for 2 years after, spending the better part of a decade playing more than 150 years. So it was a huge change. But that, at the time I was super bummed, but in hindsight, I'm kind of grateful for, because I've been touring since I was 20 years old. And when I say touring, it's every weekend, maybe in a year, you have just one weekend day that you're home and not on the road. And I didn't even realize what it was just to be home. And honestly, it came at a time too where I feel although I love music and I always have, it was definitely work. You know what I mean? Not the writing the music, but the getting out and going playing. And we were in a position where we had to play 150 shows a year, or we had to go get jobs. You know what I mean? That's right. Where we were. It forced us to kind of slow down and sit back. And I feel like although it was a huge bummer, like it reignited the whole fire in music for me. You know what I mean? I feel like I had time at home. I started writing a whole lot more, and I had a whole lot more things to write songs about. When you're playing out on the road so much, you get to where the only things you can genuinely write about is the road.
Yeah.
Which is cool some, but every song can't be about that, you know?
Right.
But yeah. So it's been kind of a wild thing, and I feel like we're still not playing. We're still not playing like we were. I think we'll play when this year's out. We'll have played maybe 45 shows.
Oh, wow.
But it's a whole different approach now for us anyway. So I don't know, but I feel like we're just now kind of getting some wind back in our sails. We put out an EP last year. We've got new music that we're about to put out. We're going to release a single in October 20th. So that's coming. So we got a bunch of cool stuff coming up. So hopefully it'll shake out.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned that.
Take the air out of the whole deal here.
No, you're good, man. You're good. So you mentioned that EP. So we were big fans of that EP, specifically the title track, "When the Smoke Clears." Like that was me and Andy have talked about this. That I think that's arguably the best song you've ever written. And so I was just like, I was gonna say, like, I was telling the guys a little bit about it because I heard it on an interview somewhere else on YouTube somewhere. But like, if you could just tell us the story about how that song kind of came about.
Yeah. So what's kind of crazy, I wrote this song several years ago. Where was I? I think I was actually out in Nashville and I was by myself. And I don't know, I came across an article I can't remember now. It might've been on Facebook. You know how you get these like just articles that pop up everywhere. And I started reading it and it was about this guy and his daughter. And it was, about how she was young and she got cancer. And unfortunately, then she passed away. But his whole outlook was through the whole thing, looking back on it, like he was a wreck. He was mad. He would get sad. And he said the whole time that his daughter was like the strong one in the situation. Like she was never scared, not for a minute. And she would always reassure him that it's going to be okay. Like this is the way it's supposed to happen. And this is the way it's going to be. And like this whole article was from his perspective and just kind of reflecting back on that. And I don't know, I wrote the song like that night, as soon as I read that article, because it was super sad. And I think, although I haven't had a daughter that have cancer, I think myself and a lot of us all have lost someone to cancer that we know well. And, for me, it was just taking the people that I know that have dealt with that and taking my own emotion and just kind of writing this story from this guy's perspective. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I just sat down and wrote it. And here's what's crazy about it. So at the same time, we used to do a lot of stuff with this group called the Texas Music Pickers. They were kind of like a promoter. And right at the same time, they had tasked people with a bunch of people they gave 10 words and said, write a song with these 10 words. So I actually used their 10 words to write this song, which I feel like made me think outside of my normal box of things. But I was super proud of it when I got done, because I was trying to, one, write this kind of story that really represented the feelings that this guy felt about his daughter. And two, I was trying to get all these words in there and make them all work, So it was a unique thing, but I'm super proud of that song. There for a while, we didn't record it, and it was only because I wasn't sure how. So that EP we recorded with a guy named Greg Strazek. He's done some Wade Bowen stuff and a few other people, a lot of people know. And me and him randomly kind of hooked up, and he was like, just send me a bunch of songs. And so I just sent him just tons of stuff. And that's a song I've always really liked, but I never could figure out how to make it work with a band, Yeah. And he said, we're going to play it rock and roll. And I was like, well, I've never thought about that. And so we went in there, and sure enough, we did. And I feel like there's no way it could have turned out better than it did with like Greg kind of at the helm being like, here's what we're going to do, you know?
Yeah. And I'm like, one thing about that song too that is like, like sonically speaking, is it gives me very heavy Tom Petty vibes, especially with the bass line. Because I was like, I love Tom Petty. I will go to my grave saying he's the greatest American artist of all time. But so it was like when I heard that, I was like, I love the sound of this. And then I got to listen to the story of it. And the thing that I found kind of like interesting from just following your career through the years is it seems as though, like, especially early on in your career, a lot of you've always done a good job of writing songs like that have a story to it, have a narrative. But a lot of times it was songs that was like, it felt like it was stuff that you had gone through. It was like a snapshot, right? Whereas this one, you know, like when I heard the story of that, I was like, okay, this is kind of like taking something that happened and then filling in the story from there, from like a third person perspective almost, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I feel like for most of my songwriting career, I've really struggled being able to write anything outside of things that have happened to me. Like I've written, like you said, I've written tons of songs through experiences that I've experienced directly. And you know, as I've gotten older, I've tried to be able to be aware of the things around me and maybe still write from my perspective and through my process, through my same thought process, but put myself in someone else's shoes. If I was in their shoes, what would I be feeling, and what would I say about those feelings? And I've really tried to do that because I've kind of came to the conclusion eventually, you know, I'm only going to have so many things happen to me, you know, like people are going to get tired of me just saying the same old thing every time. So it's been kind of like an exercise, like trying to, you know, and I don't do a whole lot. I still write a whole bunch of stuff about me, but sometimes I sit down and I just try to think of things and put myself in someone else's shoes and write from their perspective. I really like Jason Isbell, and I feel like that's something he does a really, really fantastic job of. And so, I don't know. It's just been something I've been trying to do, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it's terrible. So,
yeah, it's something I heard Dierks Bentley say on an interview one time where he was like, when he moved to Nashville, and he said he had his binder full of songs and had them laminated. He was so proud of the songs he had come with, and then somebody like that was like a big time songwriter looked at him and says, "All right, let me tell you what to do with these. Put them in a drawer, never look at them again. Then write 100 songs. Put those in a drawer, never look at them again, and then you're ready."
oh, I've got a similar story. So I remember I was fresh out of college, and my plan. Well, this is the summer going into my senior year of college. I hadn't moved to Nashville yet, and me and my dad, I was like, you know, let's go out to Nashville. He knew a couple people that like knew of people enough to like get a phone number of somebody in the business. So we went out there and we got a meeting with, and his name is Ron, but I can't remember his last name off the top of my head. But he was the original like manager for Hootie and the Blowfish, and at the time, back in 2010 or 11, he had a management company out there. So like I was stoked. I was finally going to meet somebody, you know, that knew something about music, and I just knew in 3 weeks I was going to be Garth Brooks. You know what I mean?
No, yeah.
So similar to what you said about Dierks Bentley, I had all my songs, and I had like a 5-song EP we had recorded like locally in Asheboro, and I went out there, played it for him, and he listened to it, and he was like, "So here's what I want you to do." He said, "I want you to write 500 songs and throw them all away." And he was like, "And if you can still write a song after that, I'm sure it'll be all right." And he was like, "And then you can come back." But there's so much, like, then I didn't realize it, but now I feel like there's so much truth to just, it's just like anything. What do they say? Like the 10,000 hour rule.
Yeah.
The more time you put into it, like eventually just the hard work, you know, it'll pay off, and you'll start to connect some dots, you know? But you know, whatever. I mean, at the time I thought those were great songs. Looking back, they were terrible. They're songs that we've recorded before that I like thought were great. And now looking back, I'm like, "Ooh, boy, man, we were not." I think that's just all part of the process. There's nobody playing music right now that didn't suck at one time.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I've always told myself. It's like, it's cool, you know, as long as you enjoy doing it, There's nothing wrong with it. Just keep doing it.
I mean, I've seen it even like we're big American Aquarium fans, and like I've seen it like with following BJ and them for so many years, like seeing like as much as I like some of the stuff from the first couple records they put out a long time ago when he was in Raleigh at NC State. If you look at the quality of the songwriting from Antique Hearts to like, you know, the Burn Flicker Die to now era, like his songwriting prowess has gotten a lot better since the early days.
Oh yeah, but I mean that's just part of it. And when you got guys like BJ, like he's, you know, the only song I can think of that he's recorded that wasn't his was Abraham Lincoln, and that was the Backsliders. The Backsliders. That's what I was trying to think of. They're from Raleigh too. That's the only song I can think of that he didn't write. There might be another one out there, but that's the only one I'm sure of. But his whole career, he's written all his music. You know what I mean? Yeah. For people like that, there's like there has to be growth. You know, not everybody kind of walks into a record deal and their first record is full of songs that guys that have been writing songs for 20 years wrote for them, you know? And I think sometimes, you know, that's kind of sometimes you'll hear somebody in their first record is like awesome and amazing, but even if they hadn't been in the music business for 10, 15, 20 years, the people that helped them make that record have been. You know?
Yeah, that's what sometimes like when I hear people, they're like, oh, this is the first song I ever wrote and it's good. And I'm always like, I wonder if this is actually the first song you ever wrote, because that's pretty good if it's your first one. That sounds a little too good to be true.
I don't believe it. And, you know, I also know that like sometimes there's a room full of people writing a song and everybody gets equal credit. But I've written songs in those rooms before, and you know what I mean? Everybody gets to take credit, but sometimes, you know, not everybody really wrote the song. You know what I mean?
It's like the group project, you know, it's always the one person that does all the heavy lifting, and then all their names are on the paper at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, I know in my time in Nashville, I knew people that their talent wasn't writing songs, but they got pub deals because what their talent was getting two really great songwriters in the room together. Like they knew how to. And there's a business in that too. Like, and I'm not even hating on that guy who's getting paid, you know, a pub deal, when really what he's getting paid is to be a sales guy. And he like just knows people like him, and he can get two great people that are probably not the most extroverted people in the world. And they get them in a room and they write a song together. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of weird stuff like that. You know, especially out in Nashville where, you know, people are writing songs 9 to 5 every day.
Right. How long were you in Nashville for?
Yeah.
I went out I graduated App in 2011. So I literally moved my stuff from my apartment in Boone in May, and I drove to Nashville, and I lived there until spring of 2013. So really just a couple of years. But, you know, I feel like the younger, like it didn't shake out. Like I had a lot of good opportunities. I got to meet a lot of cool people. I got to write a lot of songs with people. But it just, for where I was, I felt like looking at it, like I can look back and say this, when I left Nashville, I didn't feel this way. And I'll tell you about that too. But looking back on it, I was not there when I needed to be. You know, I think that was a good learning curve for me. Like I learned a lot in my time, but I think the songwriter I was several years later could have been more successful, you know? But, you know, I left Nashville. I'll never forget. Actually, the song Explain, I'd written that song and I was like, holy smokes, this is cool, you know? And I had several publishers in town that I was just kind of on hey, when you get a few songs, just give me a call, we'll set up a meeting. You know what I mean? So every couple months I would roll into another one, you know, and play them the new stuff I'd written. And they'd always, you know, normally tell me, okay, cool, just write some more and come back. You know, that was kind of the thing. It was kind of like you were good enough that they were interested in hearing what you had next, but not good enough that they'd pay you or, you know,
right.
And you doing anything. You know what I mean? So anyways, I'd written the song Explain, and I met with like 3 different publishers in one day. And I was so stoked for it because I was like, I'm going to play him this song and it's going to be awesome, you know? And I'll never forget. And, one guy, he was super nice, always nice to me. So I can't complain about that. But he said, man, he's like, this is a cool song, but, you really need to try to write in this box a little more and add some of the, other stuff. You know what I mean? And at the time, looking at Nashville, where it was like Florida Georgia Line just came out and was huge. Like Cruise was like the only song they had out, and it was like knocking everybody's doors off. And everybody at the time was driving home that same thing. And here I was bringing in a song like Explain that's sad.
Yeah.
It's not about, drinking or any of these things that were like huge right now.
No Daisy Dukes or Dixie Cups.
Yeah. And at the time, me, I was like, screw you guys, So, I went back to I was so mad. And I wasn't mad at the people for not necessarily not liking it. I was mad because I felt like they should. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's basically how we felt too. Like at the same time period, because that explains again. Like I was like, I love this song. I was like, I don't know why everybody else doesn't like this.
Yeah, because like,
all you other people are wrong.
Because right around the time Cruise came out, we were 18 years old and had just started college, and then Andy and I had like discovered you and had discovered like Wade Bowen or Randy Rogers. And then that eventually led to us going to a Turnpike Troubadours American Aquarium concert, which then we were egotistical enough to be like, oh, we should start a podcast about it. And that's kind of how it started about it. But it was like, we got into like music that like you make and like a lot of the stuff out of Texas. But at the same time, the thing that was popular was Florida Georgia Line.
Yeah. And see, the whole time, like in my college years, like I was all about Reckless Kelly, Randy Rogers, Wade Bowen, Stoney LaRue. Like that was my life. And that honestly, the thing is, that's the kind of music I was making. Right. But when you're from where I'm from and where you guys are from, you go to Nashville. I mean, that's what you do. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I did. But, I left that. I packed up my van. I packed up my apartment. I was so mad. I packed all my stuff and I drove all the way back to Asheboro. And on the way back, I wrote the song "The Tower," and that was just about being so pissed off. But anyways, that's when I said, "Okay, I'm not going to worry about Nashville. Like, I'm gonna go to Texas. This is what I should have done in the beginning." I was like, and I'm just going to start playing out there, and I'm just going to play as much as I can. Well, at the time, when I lived in Nashville, my whole band was still from Asheboro, North Carolina. So every Thursday, I would drive a little hybrid Camry from Nashville to Asheboro. We'd go out and play all weekend. Sunday night, I'd get back in my Camry, drive back to Nashville to spend Monday through Thursday there. That's what I did for all the time I lived in Nashville. So anyways, I couldn't move to Texas. I didn't know anybody out there. So I just started trying to book shows. I'll never forget, me and Eric went out there, just me and him. Eric plays drums. He's the only drummer that's ever played with me. And me and him loaded up in that little hybrid Camry. We had a PA, a kick drum, my guitar, and a snare. And we drove out to Texas, and we lived in a Camry for 2 weeks. When I say lived in a Camry, I mean, I think we got a hotel every third or fourth day because we couldn't afford it. But we would sleep in the Camry, like just lay there. We were in Muleshoe, Texas, which is close. It's not far from the Motor Speedway out there. And we're like trying to sleep, and a guy comes up, tap, 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 and it's a police officer. He's like, y'all can't sleep here. And I was like, well, sir, I can't drive anywhere else. And he made us get in his police car, and he drove us to a hotel. But anyways, so we did that for 2 weeks. And in that one trip, we made a lot of connections, and we actually got to play several good shows in that first go. And then we just started going out like every month, and I just tried to book shows, and we'd go live, I took my van the next time. I took the hybrid because I realized I did some math, and I thought it would save me, $600 or $700, which it did, but it was miserable. So then after that, we would take the van out there. Me and Eric would go. And at this time in my career, it was just me and Eric. Not long after I moved back to North Carolina, I put my foot down and said, look, we're not going to go play these 3-hour shows anymore. We are going to go play 90 minutes, and it's going to be nothing but our own songs, and that's going to be it. And we're not going to make any money. And unfortunately, Eric was the one that I convinced that was a good idea. Um, so he was all about it though. Either that or he just didn't have anything better to do at the moment, you know? And so anyways, me and Eric for probably three years, we just went and we would stay out in Texas for weeks at a time, and just played anywhere anybody would let us. And we still played on the East Coast, but there's such a different vibe. And you guys have probably seen this too. There's great venues out here in North Carolina, but there's so many venues, they want you to play 3 hours of cover music, and they don't really, we don't do a good job on the East Coast of building bands from zero. We love live music. If you bring you bring a band from Texas, and if they're a band that people know out here, people will go support the crap out of them. But I think the missing step here is, like I said before, everybody leaves North Carolina to go make it in the music business. And then they come back and they have fans. In Texas, you could watch Cody Johnson play to 10 people, and then 25 people, then 8 people, then 200 people. And then he sells 60,000 tickets at the Houston Rodeo.
Right.
And so from your very start, like, people can be in an empty room and they know what good music is.
Yeah.
And out here, I feel like sometimes someone has to say, this is good, listen to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that. That's something I've said a lot too about that I wish North Carolina in particular was better with, is like fostering that, like, you know, building up bands, like you said, of where they could play their own music, play 90-minute sets, and have venues that are willing to pay people to do that. Just because you go to Texas and it feels like it's on every street corner. And it's a culture there. Whereas here, like for instance, I was in Greenville 2 weeks ago for a wedding, and they have a bar there called Buccaneer Music Hall or something like that. And it's a really cool spot. It's set up perfectly for live music, but the bands that play there have to play all covers, and then about every 15th song they're able to mix in one of their own. And it's just people don't. And I was watching people when some of the bands were playing their own songs, and they just checked out. And it's like in North Carolina, like you said, we love live music, but we don't pay attention in the same way that like the Texas fans do.
Yeah, but the whole way we present music is different. Like, you could take any place, and I'm very familiar with the Buccaneer. I can give you a bunch of funny stories.
Oh yeah, he knows.
But okay, let's take a place like the Buccaneer. Before it was called Buccaneer, it was called Live Bar. We played there all the time, and Live Bar didn't have a built-in crowd. Like if the band didn't bring people, there weren't going to be people there. But there was a time in my music career where that was the best place we played. We would roll up there. We'd have an opening band. We would play for an hour and a half, and people knew our songs, and like, it was great. And I'll never forget, it got, a new person bought it. And I get it. It's business. Their goal was, hey, let's make a country club that plays top 40 hits and all this stuff. I'll never forget, they still let us come play, because at the time we were the biggest draw there, like at the Live Bar. And anyway, we rolled up in there, and I'll never forget. So we had the opening band play. They played from I think it was 10 to 11:15 or something. And we went from 11:45. We're supposed to go to 1:30. Anyways, at 1:28, I broke a string on my guitar. And I was like, because they had a hard stop at 1:30. And I was like, all right, we're going to end this song, and that'll be that. You know what I mean? And so we ended the song. Everybody was singing along with us. And actually, we were playing White Trash War there at the end. And so I just we were playing. It was great. A huge crowd that night. So I'm stoked. I get off the stage, put my guitar down. I run. We had a merch table, and I was sitting there selling merch, and a guy comes up who at the time, I didn't realize he was the new owner at the time. And he said, hey, and I was like, hey, man, I was like, this was, he said, I'm the owner now. And I said, okay, cool. Man, this was a great night. And he says, I don't know who the hell you think you are. And I was distraught. What? Because I'm one of those people, my weakness is I want everybody to like me. It has nothing to do with it. I don't want anybody running around here saying Corey Hunt is a jerk. That drives me nuts. And so I was completely distraught, because I'm we just had so many people here. And So two things he was mad about. One, all the new bands that he was bringing in that he bought it, he was giving them guarantees. Well, our deal is a door deal. And obviously there was all those people in there, and he didn't think that we deserved all that money. And then he said, he was like, if I say you're going to play to 1:30, you're going to play to 1:30. You're not going to quit early. We stopped at like 1:28. You know what I mean?
That's a big move.
He like mad. A security guard came and got him. Like he was yelling at me in front of people, and I'm like, holy smokes. So like that was right at the beginning of when it became the Buccaneer, and we didn't play there again for I think like 3 or 4 years. And unfortunately, 3 or 4 years later, that's a college town. All the kids that were in college, they were all gone, and we didn't have the repetitive plays where as people leave, you get new people. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's how it got to where it was. And we went back and played like here and there. Like we would go. A buddy of mine, Mikhail Buck, plays there a lot. You know, there was a time. I don't know if he still books it or not, but he booked it.
He was booked there for I think last weekend actually, because I saw it on the schedule when I was there for the wedding.
Yeah, and so like we either would play with him or, you know, we would go out and play with another band, and they would just, even though that's not what they did there, they would like let it work, you know, but we just, I don't know. It's very hard to go in a place that you train your audience for one thing and then do something else.
Right.
You know, and we just don't have a lot of we have a lot of great venues that look great or size great, but we don't have many great venues that just really focus on building talent and growing, you know, and I think that's been my biggest frustration that I see. You'll see like a great venue bring in like a big national act or regional act that's going to sell out, and they'll put, you know, a cover band in front of them.
Yeah.
And if it were me, I'm like, why would you not put a local original band that you can build up? And so that in, you know, a year's time, if you put them on a bunch of opening acts in a year's time, you can make them the headline and they'll sell tickets. You know what I mean? I've just never understood that, because out West, that's what they do, you know?
Right.
But, you know, obviously I also don't own a bar and I don't have the pressure of having to make money. So like
right.
tons of things that I don't know because I'm not in that business. I'm just complaining because I wish it fit more with what I wanted it to be out here than it does. You know?
Yeah, I'm with you on that for 100%.
I think City Limits did it for a little bit, but then they closed. I don't even remember. Because I know like they had Mikhail Buck open for Parker McCollum when he came. Yeah. And they're like, that was a great idea.
Yeah. And see, that's what we need more of. Unfortunately, right now, we've created kind of a cyclical problem. We've made it where bands think that that's what they got to go do. And I know, because I remember being 20 years old and people telling me, hey, you need to learn 3 hours of cover songs and you can go play. And then the idea is, hey, you're going to do this, but then one day magically it's just going to work out and all of a sudden you're playing 90 minutes and it's yourself. The truth is that's not true. That's a lie. But that's what bands around here are built on, is that, hey, I'm just going to do this for a minute, right? And then it's all somehow going to magically work out. And what they don't know is once you get in that circle, the only way you get out is you deciding you're not going to do that anymore. Now,
go
ahead.
I was going to say, do you think that's more of a population problem or a venue problem?
What do you mean population problem?
The people that go see the shows. Do you think it's just more that the people that go see you at the Buck just want to hear the hits on a cover band, or is it more of a venue promoter
I'm not
issue?
on the people necessarily that come to the show, because those are the same people that are going to go out this weekend and see Zach Brown, or they're going to go out, or I mean Zach Bryan.
That's fair.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Yeah.
I think as a whole, and it's a really hard problem that not one venue, not one band can fix, like just like that.
Right.
I think the problem is, we've created a scene where people are forced to go play 3 hours and pretend, and play mostly cover songs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's how we present bands. So, you know what I mean? This is a good band. They play music you like. Instead of, this is a great band. They have great songs that I like.
Right.
The same people that are going to see the cover band shows, the reason that I think they don't like if something else gets put in front of them is because that's not what they're going there for, and that's not what they expect to see. Like
Right.
they're going there to hear, blame it all on my roots.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And if we could do a better job of putting, good original bands and songwriters on a better platform to present to the population, I think our scene would change. And I don't know how you do that. I just know there's other places in the country that do a better job than we do. And obviously it's successful. I mean, heck, all the top bands in Texas right now are all of a sudden becoming huge.
Yes.
Like it's crazy. The same guys that, we're going to jump a little bit. I got a funny story to tell you. I talk a lot. So if I talk too much, y'all just shut me down.
No, you're good.
That's why you're here.
I'll never forget this. It was December of 2016. We went and played a place called the Tap in College Station with Co Wetzel. Okay.
Oh yeah.
His record, that first record, well, not the first record, but the record with
Parker. Noise Complaint.
Noise Complaint. Thank you. That had came out in September, I believe, of that same year. So anyways, we played with them in December. There's probably 300 people tops, right? And there's probably 100 people there that came to see us. Like it was a pretty even. Like we got up there, we did our thing. People sang it was cool. Co got up there, like the 300 people there sang it was cool. We went about our way. And then it was like 3 months later, we got on the same bill. It was us and Co again. And there was like 2,000 people there. And no one cared that we were there. Like it was a mind-blowing how, and just that little of a time, Co Wetzel went from this to this. But I think the big thing is they presented him well. Like Co came out of nowhere. It was a lot of fun. And people said, hey, there's a great band and it's a lot of fun. And all of a sudden, everyone in Texas loved it. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we do. And people in Texas loved it, not just because it was fun, but because it was from Texas.
Yeah.
That's just like if you're a band from Lubbock, people are going to like you just in Lubbock, just because you say you're from Lubbock. They're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Like I feel like here, if you say, okay, well, I'm from North Carolina, the first thought is, well, they can't be that good. They're from here. But you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think you got to get over that hump somehow. And it's so, it's so wild.
I think we're missing things, something like the Blue Light, in Lubbock, because, while we're here in Raleigh, like we have Lincoln Theater that holds like 900 people. We have the Ritz that holds 1,500, 2,000 people, but we don't have those like smaller than Lincoln Theater venues that are there that are, like you said, that present, hey, these are bands with original music. Like what we have like Tin Roof, and trust me, I've been to Tin Roof a handful of times in my day. It's fun, but you're going with the expectation of it's a cover band and it's a quote unquote country bar, rather than it's a venue or a bar that there's going to be live original music being played. Yeah. So I wish we had some smaller venues that would do that.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, and that I think what you're saying is a good point, because like out in Lubbock on a Thursday night, it does not matter who is playing on that stage in Lubbock. Like the college kids are going to come out because that's what they do. But they're expecting to hear a band they might have not ever heard before, right? The same group of people with the same ideals and mindset, they go to a cover bar in Raleigh, North Carolina, but that's what they expect to hear is a cover band.
Right.
It's like you could literally, like the same groups of people probably have the same different personalities in the group. It's the same demographic. It's just, it's presented in such a different way. And that, Texas has what they have and we have what we have. It's just,
So
it's weird.
Tell me your thoughts on this. Texas, I think, in my opinion, is the only state in the union that's like this. Texas is like a country to Texans. People say, I'm from Texas. I'm a Texan. Do you think I don't want to call it naturalistic or nationalistic, excuse me. I don't want to call it that. But, the deep pride, I'm not saying North Carolinians don't have pride, but, Texas is its own breed. Do you think that has something to do with it. That they
100%.
pump up their music so much because they're from Texas.
Yeah,
Because
100%. I think, they have a lot of state pride. And I think, just like I mentioned earlier, if a band like, we like this because it's from Texas.
yeah.
You get what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
saying somebody from Texas don't like things that aren't from Texas. It's just that they're always going to give their own the benefit of the doubt and the chance because they're proud of where they're from and they're proud what Texas creates and puts out into the world. But it makes everything more localized. But I think it comes down to like they have local radio stations that DJ there in the radio station is deciding what to play. You know what I mean? Like in Amarillo, Texas, Craig Vaughn is a DJ there. He plays our songs because he likes it, right? And he thinks that his listeners will like it. He's not got a guy sitting 1,500 miles away says, okay, well, you got to play all these songs in every hour. But that's the rest of the world. That's what they have. But, a lot of things are like the Texas music scene in Texas. You know what I mean? Like they've got Whataburger. You know why everybody likes Whataburger? Because it's from Texas.
Because it's from Texas.
It is great. I'm not even going to hate on Whataburger. We go there every time I'm out there. But there's so much pride in where they're from. And I honestly believe, and a lot of people don't like that. Like they go out from other states and they go there and they don't like it. But I believe if we all had a sense of pride of our own community, we'd all be better off for it. And I feel like I have that pride. I'm jealous. I always tell people in Texas, they're like, why don't you come here? And I say, the same reason you love Texas is the same reason I can't come here because I love it.
Right.
I'm proud of Randolph County where I'm from. You know what I mean? I'm proud that I went to Western Randolph and I'm loyal to those things, and I will live in Randolph County till I die because I'm loyal to that, and people from Texas are like that. And I just feel like there's not a lot of places where people are like that,
Yeah, I would say Texas probably is the only state where they're
to that level,
proud.
definitely.
Yeah, to that level. Yeah, I mean, they say everything's bigger in Texas. So,
see, I respect that because I'm the same way with North Carolina. I love North Carolina, and I'll live here till the day I die. Like that's part of the reason why we wanted to have you, and we've been in talks with some of the others in like the North Carolina independent music scene about coming on, is because while like a lot of our listeners are from Texas, we have a good bit in Ohio and throughout the Southeast. We also have a good bit in North Carolina. And if there was any way we could just like get your guys' names out to people who maybe haven't heard of you, that's what we wanted to do. Because we kind of talked about in August, we wanted to do like kind of focus on North Carolina musicians through that month on with what we were talking about on the podcast. And then we were like, let's try to get them on the show and just talk to them. Because I agree with you. Like, we just don't have the infrastructure in North Carolina that Texas does. And sometimes it's an access problem and a presentation problem. So if there's anything that we can try to, you guys as artists and we as, doing a podcast can do like a small part to try to help that, that's what we wanted to do.
Yeah. And I'll tell you guys, like what you guys are doing, that is a huge part in changing it. Right. Like, when I started playing, I feel like in North Carolina that like there was nothing like this. You know what I mean? There's a group, they call themselves Red Dirt NC, and they help promote people. Like stuff like that didn't exist. And I think the fact that we're getting that and we're getting you guys that are trying to promote a Carolina music scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like those are the things that it takes. It takes people realizing, hey man, we've got some people right here, that are pretty good. And the other thing that makes is the bigger the scene gets, all of a sudden your talent, it stays, right?
Yeah.
It didn't go away. It stays here and we get more talent. I mean, if you go out in Lubbock, you can throw a rock and hit a songwriter.
Right.
You can, but it's not a problem. It's because people know that you can be there and you can do that. Like that is a legitimate thing that you can go do, And I've said many times, if we never get over the hump and we never get deemed successful, if we can just be something that helped, like create something that eventually other people can be successful, like that'll be fine with me. I play music because I love it. It's never been about being famous, or anything like that. It's just I don't know. I write songs and I feel like they help me. I hope they can help other people. But the other thing is too, is like I've got so many friends that play music, they're the same way. Like I'd love to be able to, you know, help them grow and help them do things. And it'd be super dope to, you know, to have a North Carolina that has what everybody can recognize as a Carolina scene. You know what I mean? Like a music scene. Like we can say we have a music scene now, but we don't. But when you get to the point where your average country music listener, you can say the Carolina scene, they can tell you 2 or 3 artists that are actually from it and help create that scene. That's when we've accomplished something.
And it's one of those things that I will say that in the last 2 or 3 years. So a lot of our friends are not as in the weeds with country music as like we are. They're a little bit more like top 40 country radio. But even in the last couple of years, more of them have known like you guys, like your music and Mikkel Buck's music. So it's like I have seen it kind of grow a little bit with people kind of getting into it from like some North Carolina artists. And, you know, there are other guys like Tyler Hatley, super talented dude. That like I wish that they would get more notoriety, especially within our own state, you know, but like just in general at large.
Well, I was going to piggyback on Logan's point. I would already say, you know, obviously I'm rooting for you. Hope you hit it big, but you are laying the groundwork because I think there's a small, not even small, it's quite a big rebellion against mainstream country music, you know, which is Zach Bryan's and all these people blowing up. And, you know, you're touring all over NC. But when I was in college, freshman year, 2012, I think my sophomore year, the only band that ever played college bars that wasn't cover songs was Corey Smith. I went to see him. He was the only original act I think I ever saw in a dive bar. And the Buck, that wasn't even really a college scene. It now it's like a young adult post grad scene.
Yeah.
But I mean, Mikkel Buck's there. I mean, you're starting to get a lot of people with real original music playing. So you certainly poured the foundation for that. So I got to tip my cap on that.
There's tons of people that have, and you know, Tyler Hatley, Mikkel. You know, something else is when I first started playing, I didn't know anybody around here that was songwriters. Mm-hmm. And there's a guy. Well, okay, so the guy that actually started Red Dirt Promotions, his name's Chris Regal, and he got together at the time. This was like 2011 or 12, maybe. He did a Christmas tour, and it was myself, Greg Payne, Chris Lane, and Benton Blunt. We were the first ones, right? This is obviously before Chris Lane blew up, you know, and had a bunch of radio hits. But anyways, we did this tour. It was like 6 days. We played every night for 6 days, acoustic song swap. That was the first song swap I had ever played, like in North Carolina, and heard of. That was also the first time, like, I was around other people that were like trying to push original music. We did that for 8 years. And during that 8 years, I played it every year. Mikkel played it several years. Kevin Dedman of Dirty Grass Soul, Tyler Hatley played it a bunch of years. In fact, freaking Tyler Childers was supposed to play on it with us. And then he got his record deal like not long. I think, so we were playing it in like November. And Nick Jamerson from the band Sunday Best.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We've had Nick on here before.
Yeah, so Nick was playing. He's played with us several years on the tour, and he was playing that tour with us. And we had someone that fell off; they got sick. So he was like, "I'm going to get my buddy Tyler Childers." Well, we didn't know Tyler Childers really at the time. Like we knew of him, but he was no different than us,
right?
And so anyway, Tyler was like, "Yeah, we'll do it." And then I mean, I don't know the back end, but I know like things started to happen, and they basically were like, "We can't," you know, like his management or whatever. I think when he agreed to it, he didn't have those things. And then,
right.
You know, like, but, you know, it wasn't long after that, like everybody knew who Tyler Childers was, you know. But that alone, like, built so many relationships among people that were trying to play music. And I feel like, to me, when I look back on, you know, how, you know, things have changed and how there's like a group of musicians that not only play original music, but know each other. It all started with Chris Regal doing that very first Christmas tour. And, you know, now like, you know, Tyler's cut songs other people in that group's written and Mikhail has, and like we're all intermingled now, to the point where we talk all the time. And like me, I've got new music, I'll send it out to like a group of people and try to get feedback, and they'll all do the same. Like it's really, really cool. Just to have like a group of people now that I feel like that type of thing didn't exist,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping like all the new people as they come along, like all the new songwriters and all the younger people that, they're coming into it. They're 20, they're 21, they're 22. They can like join this kind of thing and even make it way cooler and way bigger. And, I don't know, maybe in like 250 years, like North Carolina will have this huge, Carolina music.
So when you did that like Christmas tour thing, was it around that time period? So like we always talk about it around Christmas time on this show. Like I hate Christmas music in general, except for a few select songs. Yeah. I have added 2 of your Christmas songs that you've put out to my very small list of Christmas songs I like. Was it around that time period that you wrote, Break Up Before Christmas?
Yeah. So I think it was the second year we did the Christmas tour. Like the whole thing is like, Chris would say, everybody's got to learn one Christmas song, and we're going to do a round, like one round where everybody plays a Christmas song. I'm like, well, I want to play my own song, so I'll write a Christmas song. So the first one I wrote was that Break Up Before Christmas. And then, several years later, I wrote the other one, Christmas Like This. And I don't know if y'all know Todd Allman, but he's got one called Christopher, and he wrote that because of the tour. Mm-hmm. And freaking hilarious. So
I'll check that out.
Christopher. Yeah. It's really funny. But and other people did too. Like Tyler's never recorded it, but he wrote a Christmas song. I think Greg Payne, his band, the Piedmont Boys, they've got one out there, and it all dates back to this Christmas tour, and everybody having to have a Christmas song to play.
That's pretty awesome. I ain't gonna lie.
That is pretty funny because before your 2 songs you've put out, and then there was an old 97's Christmas record they put out that I liked a few of those. It was literally just Tom Petty's Christmas All Over. Again, that was like one of the only ones I ever liked. But I was like, when I was listening to yours when they came out, I was like, I can get on board with this, especially like Break Up for Christmas because it's hilarious. I was like, and if we're all being honest, it's a thought that's probably gone through everybody's mind at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, the reason I wrote that, and my wife hates that song. I remember trying to come up with an idea to write for a Christmas song, and my mom had said, until my wife now, I'd never dated anyone over Christmas my whole life. And she pointed that out. And I said, well, there's got to be a reason. You know what I mean? I was thinking off that song, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I like it. It's fun to play at Christmas and to pull out something that it's not new, but like it feels fresh every year, for a little bit.
Yeah.
So
there's probably a meme about that now. We should make one.
There you go.
Should make one, absolutely.
Hey, you know what? That should be one of those TikTok things this year. It's like
we should. Yeah, we should do it. Absolutely.
And we should try to use that song as the one.
We should. Absolutely.
That's a way to get the streaming numbers up on it because I think that counts in the streaming numbers, doesn't it? When people use TikToks on it.
Yeah, and I'm terrible at TikTok. And this year I made my TikTok for the first time this year, and I feel so old even saying this. And I'm trying to get not doing social media the way I should. I think naturally, like, although I can get on here and talk with you guys, and I feel like super comfortable, but like I'm kind of like an introvert a little bit, and so like posting on social media all the time, like takes effort for me. It's not like
right.
I think some people it comes so easy. Like I have to consciously think about it, and like I've got people that'll be like, "Corey, you haven't posted anything in a while. You got to post something," So I'm trying to get better at TikTok, but I'm
TikTok.
not.
I don't understand TikTok is the thing because we're roughly like 4 or 5 years like younger than you. So it's like I'm on the edge of some of my friends know TikTok, but most of us don't. And because it just wasn't really a thing when we were in our early 20s. But weirdly enough, like for the podcast, we started a TikTok, and I have no rhyme or reason for why some videos do well and some don't. And somehow it's the social media platform that we have the most followers on, and it's the one that we are the worst at. So it's I don't understand it.
I'll tell you a funny story. Logan wanted to do a funny TikTok probably a year or two ago. And I'm very introverted as you are. I don't talk, unless I know you really. My life's goal is to be unseen and unnoticed at events. So, oh, you were there? I didn't even see you. Good. Anyway, Logan wanted me to record. What was it?
We were doing something for the Georgia-Alabama national championship, like
That's
a
right,
prediction thing.
I had to drink a 6-pack before I could even record myself for like 10 seconds to record it for the TikTok.
Just to say who his pick was.
Yeah, for 10 seconds. Yeah, I had to record myself. I had to drink a 6-pack. Drink them quite quickly. It's just to get the courage to do it. I've had an Instagram probably for 10 years, and I've posted twice. I've never posted a story. Because all I think about is like, nobody cares what I have to say.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about this picture.
I feel the same way.
Yeah. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to care about this picture I'm going to post, even if I think it's cool. I'm just like, I'm not going to post it. I don't really Snapchat. The most I do at Instagram is send them to funny reels that are probably like 3 weeks old because they've already been on TikTok. And I don't ever get on TikTok.
It's usually the timeline. They're a couple weeks behind TikTok.
So yeah, I'm very old.
Don't say that because I'm older than you are. But yeah, I'm trying to get better. And I think I've said this for like several years. I'm trying to get better at social media. But yeah, if TikTok was like that was something that you guys didn't have, think about. I'm like a grandpa trying to use a computer for the first time.
I think
I've always thought you did.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've always thought you did pretty good on Instagram because when like you post stuff, it just seems like it's just a normal person. Like I've always thought you did pretty good at it.
Well, I appreciate that, but just know whatever I post went through a bunch of that ain't good. Oh man, try something good.
You're your own worst critic. I understand, 100%.
Yes. So one question I did have, and I could be wrong, but I'm one of those nerds that love to read song credits and liner notes on stuff. Because I know it was recorded by Hatley and Mikkel Buck, but like, didn't you have a hand in writing NKMU?
Yeah, and this song has actually a wild story of how it even came to be. So one night, my buddy Greg, who I talked about before, and he called me and was like, "Hey man, he's originally from Kernersville, but lives now out in South Carolina, like close to Greenville, Spartanburg area." And he called me and was like, "Hey, I'm at my dad's house. Why don't you come let's write songs tonight?" And I was like, "Cool." And I was like, "Well, my buddy Todd's with me. Do you care if he comes?" He's like, "Heck no, come on down." And Greg, like I used to say, I met him when I first started playing music, and I always felt like I've always looked up to Greg because he's like the most free spirit I've ever met in my life. He is like a living, I don't even know what you call him. Like he's just interesting. I always say I feel like he's the guy that's going to live till he's 120 and then die in RV in Mexico on tour. You know what I mean? Anyways, we go up to his dad's house, and he was like, "Hey man," I was like, "I think I got a way to get us a cut with Zach Brown." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "So he met this guy named Wyatt Durrett down at the Windjammer in Charleston, and Wyatt Durrett has written a few songs that Zach Brown cut. I don't know the connection there. I've never met Wyatt Durrett. All I know is Greg said Wyatt Durrett and me wrote a little bit of this song. We need to finish it, and we'll get him to go pitch this to Zach Brown." And so anyways, Greg plays what him and Wyatt had come up with. And he said that Wyatt was like, "Yeah, just go finish it, whatever, And it was the very beginning of that song. I was lost in a bottle, swimming in the women, and making up a new definition of sin. And I was getting pretty good at some pretty bad living. I was running wild." And anyway, so we took that, and me, Todd, and Greg wrote the rest of the song. Well, we really dug it. I think Tyler cut it first. And then when Tyler decided he wanted to record it, we were like, we got to figure out how to, do this correct because, Wyatt Durrett is a part of the song that he doesn't even know exists, right? So we told Greg, I was like, you got to figure this out. So I guess when Greg and Wyatt went their separate ways, Greg went with us. We wrote a song. Well, heck, if Wyatt Durrett didn't go and finish the rest of it was someone else too. So him and Jason Mraz, you remember him?
Yeah.
Well, you done, and I bet I've played it. Well, so him and White Durrett wrote a song with the same first verse, but after that, they sound vastly different. In fact, like they don't even sound the same other than they have the same lyrics in the first verse. So anyways, now all of a sudden we've got a song, and Wyatt just tells Greg, look, just give Jason Mraz credit on yours. You know what I mean? And we'll just call it all a wash. Like everybody wrote all these songs. You know what I mean? So if you go to like BMI or wherever the real credits are, it has me, Todd Allman, Greg Payne, White Durrett, and Jason Mraz. But so technically, we wrote a song with White Durrett and Jason Mraz, and I've never met either of those guys.
Right.
So anyways, so we got it all figured out, and Tyler went and recorded the song, and like we recorded that at my house. Like that was actually Tyler and Eric played the drums. My buddy Robert, who's played on a bunch of our records, played guitar, and then we did all the production there at the house, and Tyler put it out on his EP, and it did really good. And then Mikhail heard it because Tyler was playing it, and Mikhail thought Tyler had written it. So Mikhail calls Tyler and was like, hey, can I, get permission to do your song? And so, Mikhail ends up calling us, and then Mikhail records it, and he records it in Nashville. And I can't remember the producer, but they did an awesome job of like recording. They recorded it, with like pros. Tyler recorded it with us, not pros. So, and then Greg Payne recorded it too. So there's 3 versions of NKMU the way we wrote it. And then if you go out there's a band called Yesterday's Wine, and that's Wyatt Durrett's band. And his band actually has a version of NKMU, except it's the version that him and Jason Mraz wrote.
Right.
So it's really confusing. And what's funny is somebody came across that Yesterday's Wine version, and they sent it to Tyler thinking, they were like, Tyler, someone has stolen your song. Like they moved off the first verse of your song. And so it's just kind of wild, but it's been cool. Like that song has been, I think Tyler's had like a few million streams. Mikhail's had 3 or 4 million streams.
Yeah.
So like, it's really cool. Like, and like, I've thought about recording it 3 or 4 times, but I feel like I can't do it as good as them 2 can. So we've just never done it. Cause I'm like, I really like Tyler and Mikhail's versions. Like, I don't think I can top it. Like I don't want to record it and be like 3rd place, the 3rd best version.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite songs.
Yeah. We love that song.
I
like
love
it.
Yeah,
that song.
retweet.
Yeah.
So I get, is the song about a woman or like religion or both? Or we got to talk when we did Mikhail Buck back in August, and we got to talking about that after the show.
Yeah. So we wrote it about a girl.
Yes.
We wrote it about a girl. Later on, someone mentioned to me like about religion. I'm like, you know what? It really kind of fits that too.
Yeah,
It does.
it does. Yeah, Andy dropped a truth bomb on us, and we're like, oh, yeah, it kind of works.
I'm gonna tell you something funny too. So in the chorus, we were trying to write the chorus, and Greg was in the chorus. I had a couple lines, but none that I could use. So we were arguing. Like, he wanted to make a reference to cocaine, and I was like, we can't talk about cocaine in the song. And so Greg, I was trying to say something along the lines of we wrote some like verses, but we could never use. And Greg was like, I got it. We're going to say, I had a couple lines, but none that I should use. And that's going to be safe. He was like, because if you listen to it, maybe this could be drugs. Maybe it could be right lines of
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Well, it leaves it open-ended.
Open-ended. But you know what? I think, like what you mentioned, Andy, I think what's cool about that song is like, it's not like a very general song, but when you listen to it, depending on what you're going through and what you're feeling, you can really kind of mold your situation into it, right? So whether it's about a girl or maybe it's religion or this or that, I think there's a lot of things you can interpret the way you need to like really let it hit home. And I think that's why people really, have really liked it, So I don't know. I hope I keep saying I hope like somebody famous will cut that song. That'd be super cool. Luke Combs make a radio hit out of it. I don't know why he hadn't cut it yet.
Hey, look, there you go. Hey, fellow App State guy too.
Fellow App State Carolina guy. He needs to go record. Support Carolina. So if you guys talk to him, that's what you need to tell him.
Yeah, I think that he's a little bit hard to get a hold of these days. there's like rows and rows of management before you even get to talk to Luke these days.
Yeah.
It's funny hearing the story behind that song, because I remember back in like 2019 when Mikhail was opening for Parker at City Limits. Andy and I talked to Mikhail for like 20 minutes after his set, and I remember asking him, I was like, "Who wrote that song?" And he goes, "I know Corey was involved." He goes, "A bunch of other people. It's a complicated story." And I just never got like the full story. So it's like I had to ask that question when I had a chance to speak to you.
Yeah. Well, like it's such a weird way how it came about. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's like, 4 or 5, let's see, me, Greg, Todd. So there's 5 people's names on it, but really only 3 of us sat in the room, at a time and wrote essentially the whole song that we all know as MKMU. Me, Greg, and Todd wrote, but then, you have Wyatt Durrett that really came up with that first verse. And that, if you go, y'all should go look that up. It's so different. It's a totally different song, but the very first verse is exactly the same.
I'm gonna have to check that out too.
Yeah, it's funny.
So who are some artists that we should be aware of that maybe we're not, or same for the listeners, like maybe some people that you know of that is either been established for a while or up and coming?
I'll tell you, I got a friend. Oh, I was looking for my phone and I'm talking to you guys on it. I got a friend request like a few weeks ago, and they sent me a message and they said that, they really liked what we were doing. And I went and listened to their music and I was like, crap, I kind of like what they're doing. I don't know how young they are or how long they've been doing it, but it's a band called like Fox and Veed. But I followed them.
I saw them playing. Kyle, we saw them playing Greenville the other day. Actually.
Oh, is that? That's who it was at the Buck. Yeah, it was.
Okay, yeah. I know nothing of them, but I listened to a couple of their own songs, and it's very like, to me, it's very Texas. It's very like Co Wetzel, Reed South, like that kind of rock and roll thing. But I was like, man, this is good. Like I like it. This is good. And like I said, I don't know much about them yet. Like I plan on trying to dig into it a little more. But they're from somewhere around here. I just don't know where.
I don't want to disparage them, but I was a little inebriated. I can't remember. Did they play an original song?
They played some originals, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So they were good. I remember like I listened in on their original stuff and I really liked it. And I made a note I think I followed them on Twitter because I made a note. I was like, I got to check these guys out because I had never heard of them. But so it's funny you bring them up because they've been on my list of like new bands to check out their music.
Yeah, they were at the Buck at the wedding.
Yeah.
See, and that's the curse. Like you get a band that maybe is kind of new and getting going, and they might have a couple decent songs, but they got to go play, right? So then they got to play 3 hours of other people's music like that. That's the bummer. Like that's kind of the path that everybody feels like they got to take around here, and it kind of sucks,
Yeah.
And I think back in the old days, they would go around, they'd have like 6 or 7 bands. And if a band had 2 songs, then they played 2 songs and they moved on to the next band. Like the Beatles and a lot of their shows only played like 30 minutes, when they were like huge, because, it was a big show. You know what I mean? They just have tons of different bands, and it's just, I don't know, it's such a different thing now. And I don't know why we don't, do the things that people have done in the past that were awesome.
And even like back in the old days too, everybody used to cut everybody's songs all the time. Like it would be no big deal for a song to be recorded and sometimes released to radio 3 times in the same calendar year. Whereas like now it's like, it's much, much less common.
I think like for our scene, like the fact that NKMU was recorded by 3 or 4 different people in our area, I think that's huge, because here's what it does. It gets all these people that know the song, right? So if Tyler goes play somewhere and he plays that song, people know that song. If Mikhail goes plays it, they know that song. And like we can, you have a scene, and they might not know every band yet, but if you get a bunch of people all knowing the same song and the song is popular, like that's huge for our scene too. Like I think it's important to support each other. And I say this, and I've never really cut other people's songs, so I also realize that as I'm saying this. But I think it's like it's important, and that really helps support each other when we do that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So before we jump to the lightning round that we usually like to kind of close out interviews with, you fellas have anything else y'all want to ask before we jump to that?
What's your favorite song to play in concert?
Oh man, that's a good question. What's my favorite song to play in concert? Honestly, we play "Will the Circle Be Unbroken" every
That's
show.
fantastic.
And like we put a recording out this summer of that, but we've been playing it for like probably 6 or 7 years every show, and it's so fun. Like it's one of my we just get out there, we have a good time. It's got a cool like little groove that we play it to, and it's a song like everybody knows, but it's one of those like you don't even realize you know it until it comes on. And
right.
So yeah, funny you say that. Funny you said we had a Kyle's a dumbass moment before you jumped on. I was like, I really am vibing with this Southern gospel vibe to the song. He was like, you haven't heard this before? And I was like, no, I don't recall it. And he was like, it's a cover. And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, they never played it in church or anything? And I was like, no, I can't recall. He was like, oh yeah, what did you say it was originally recorded, Logan?
It was like 1907. And I was like, I told Kyle, I said, I better warn you of that before we get on there and you ask him about how he wrote that song.
Yeah, I was like, I'm really digging this. It's got a Southern gospel flair. And I was like, I really kind of vibe with this. And he told me that. I was like, well, I'm a dumbass.
That's so funny. So this is funny. It's funny that you say that. I had someone message me like 2 weeks ago on Facebook, and they were asking me like questions. Just everything they said was a question about this and that. And they were like, do you write all your songs? I'm like, yeah, everything that we have out, I've written except "Will the Circle Be Unbroken." And then he says, well, I was listening to the "Will the Circle Be Unbroken." And I really like that song. It really stands out amongst the other ones. I'm like, I was like, I just told you that's the only one I didn't write.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I was like, well, thank you, Logan, for calling me out on that one before I said something stupid as hell.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
But I do love that song, man. It's fantastic.
And I'll tell you, we recorded that out in Texas at Fort Worth Sound. We went out to play this summer, and we had a day where we just didn't have anything to do. And I was like, y'all just want to go record a song? And so like the Monday before we were flying out on a Wednesday, that Monday I reached out to Fort Worth Sound and saw if they had any openings on that Friday. And he was like, yeah, let's come on down. So we got in there. It was me, Eric, and Todd. And then we had a guitar player and a steel guitar player and a keys player that we didn't know. And they came and sat in with us. And he was like, okay, play the song. So we played it one time. And he was like, all right, y'all come here and check it out. And that was it. I thought we were going to go back and like re-sing it or replay it. You know what I mean? Like second. Nope. That was it. That was the one.
Well, hey, it came out really, really good.
Yeah.
It was funny because we did all that, and then like the I think the steel guitar player like replayed a couple parts. The guitar player, he played like rhythm when we all played it together, and so he made a pass playing like lead stuff. But I was like, okay, when I was like, when are we gonna go back and like recut the vocals and all this? He's like, I don't think we are. I was like, okay, what?
So one take Corey over here.
One take Corey. One more question. On your Spotify cover photo, which one's Eric and which one's Todd? The bandana or no bandana is?
I think I'm trying to think of the photo.
It's you three. Like you're sitting down, they're standing up behind you.
Yeah, I think Eric.
Well, it might be a hat. No, excuse me, it's a hat. Yeah, not a bandana.
Actually, you know what? In this picture, check it out. That I don't know if you can see.
I can see it. Yep.
Yeah, that's Eric.
Okay.
And That is Todd over here.
Okay.
Okay.
And just for clarification, which one was the one that slept with you in a Camry for 2 weeks?
Eric.
Okay. Nice. Yeah.
Hey, let me tell. I know you guys are ready to go to the round, but this picture behind me,
Yeah.
so when we released Watch on Burn, we were going to go shoot a music video, and I didn't have anybody to play bass. And my buddy Todd, who's the same Todd that's a songwriter in his own right, I was like, "Hey, can you come pretend to play bass?" And he was like, "Yeah." So we shot this video, and we get done. I'm like, "Todd, the bass looks good on you." Dude goes and buys a bass, and now he plays bass in my band. And that was not long ago. I mean, that was when we put out Watch on Burn, like 2021. Yeah. And Todd, I was looking for bass players because we were gearing up to get back going after COVID. And Todd was like, "I think I could do it." I'm like, "Really?" He was like, "Yeah." So he learned it. And I mean, he does so great. And Todd is so much fun. Like, he gets up there and has more fun than anybody at the show when he plays.
Is he a slap bass or is he a traditionalist?
I don't even know how to answer that question.
I wouldn't know either.
Oh, you can tell slap basses. They're all over it. And they. I'm not a musician, but it's fun to watch slap basses. They'll take their palm and like slap the top string on the bass. I don't even know what it is.
I don't think he does that. I think
okay. It's very jazz heavy. It's always fun. Sometimes the YouTube algorithm is just wild, and you'll go down a rabbit hole of just watching nonsense. So
the only thing I know about slap bass is from that Paul Rudd, Jason Segel movie where they're just like slapping the bass, man.
Yeah.
That's like the only thing I know about.
It's a certain way to play bass. It's cool as hell to watch like a real slap bassist play it. It's very jazz influenced, but I mean, they'll just take their palm and strum the top chord, I think is what they're doing. I have no musical inclination, so I couldn't tell you.
I mean, I've seen people with like a stand-up bass.
Yeah.
Like slap the bejesus out of it.
But
Todd doesn't slap it. He just I don't know, he just plays it.
Hey, as long as he's good at it, hey, who cares?
I'm gonna let you guys on in a little secret. I'm not that great of a musician. I learned guitar because I knew I wanted to write songs, and I knew you guys mentioned Corey Smith when I was a freshman in college at App. He played at Legends like the weekend before Labor Day, so like at the beginning of the year. And I went and saw him, and I watched it, and I was like, I want to do that. And so I went and bought
on a hell of a show.
I went and bought a guitar and said I was going to write songs and get up and tell stories. And that's kind of that's what started it all for me, like way back in the day. So like I'm just good enough at guitar to like play and write songs.
Well, you're better than one of our buddies. He bought a guitar our freshman year of college just to pretend to play it and pick up chicks in the dorm room.
Wait, was that Chase? Was that Chase?
Yeah, that
sounds like Chase. Yeah. It's funny because Andy and I have similar stories. We bought guitars in college and learned to play. And then I started like writing songs, and I still like write songs just that nobody will ever hear just because I enjoy doing it. But the problem was neither Andy nor I can sing. So that was us just picking on the guitar in the apartment when we were living together was as far as it was ever going to get.
Hey, I tell you, if you go ask my roommates or the people that live next to us in the dorm, they hated me. I wasn't a good singer either. Trying to start, I was trying to learn. I'd never sang or done any of it. And so I'd be sitting there. I'll never forget, like up in Boone at the time, like Wagon Wheel was like huge. Not like Darius Rucker Wagon Wheel.
Yeah.
And so that was like the first song I was trying to learn to play, and I was trying to sing it, and it was terrible. All of it was terrible. But I don't know. I just kind of did it a little every day, and eventually it got where it wasn't as terrible,
Yeah.
It's funny when that moment happens because I remember specifically whenever I finally learned to play rhythm guitar, because it took me all summer long, right, of just playing every night. I went home for the summer to work, and my younger brother was still in high school, and our bedroom walls were adjoining. And I would be like playing, and it would just sound so bad, right? Beginning of the summer, middle of the summer, he would bang on the wall at 11 o'clock at night. He was like, "You fucking suck. Just stop." And then by the end of the summer, he comes in there, he goes, "Hotel California, I can tell." And then like a few months later, he's out buying a guitar just because he's like, well, if my dumbass brother can do it, I can figure it out too.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, but it's so crazy to think about. Like, there was a time when John Mayer didn't know how to play guitar.
Right.
Like, there was a time where he was as bad as anybody. You know,
Right.
like it's crazy. I don't know why that like my mind, it blows my mind every time I think about stuff like that. But yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah. Are you a Mayer fan at all?
A who?
John Mayer fan?
Oh, I love John Mayer.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you. I do too. The other two dudes give me so much shit about it, but I was like, I love John Mayer. He's a fantastic artist, fantastic guitarist.
Well, let me give you my spiel, because I feel like,
Oh God.
yeah, here it comes.
You're gonna justify all of Logan's opinions and just infuriate me and Andy.
Hear me out. So I feel like my whole music career, it's always been like genre based. Like,
Mhm.
you either hate like people on mainstream radio, or you love them. You can't be both. Or you either love like these underground artists, or you don't. You can't be both. And like, I love songs, and I don't care about the rest. You know what I mean? And the other thing is too, there's some people I don't like, but I recognize the talent, right? I know I'll get shot dead for a lot of people for this, but like, I think Taylor Swift is a good example. I was like, I don't sit in my truck and listen.
Here we go.
Look, I don't sit in my truck and listen to Taylor Swift, okay? But she writes her songs, and I don't feel like she sounds like anybody else. I feel like people try to sound like her. So in that itself, she is a great artist, you know? And I think John Mayer,
100% agree.
John Mayer is John Mayer. You don't like, I just respect the talent in it. I don't find myself listening to John Mayer all the time, but let me tell you, like, Slow Dancing in a Burning Room, that guitar lick, like, that is a whole vibe in itself, and I've never heard anything like it in my whole life. But there's tons of people like that. And you know, and I just hate, like, I hate when people don't like something just because it's mainstream, or just because it's Americana, or just because it's this. I was like, you should love and hate things based off what it is, you know?
Right.
I mean, I like Ed Sheeran. I think Ed Sheeran's another one of those. Like, he does a lot of things that fit in, you know, with the mainstream stuff. But I think when you get to the core of what Ed Sheeran is, he is a great artist that can really write sad songs, just him and acoustic guitar. And like, he's great, you know?
I can agree with that one. Yeah.
He's got famous off of some songs that, you know, there's not a lot of depth to him, but like his catalog, he's got some songs that are so awesome. Like that record he just put out, Subtract, which I know hadn't been like the biggest selling record or nothing, but it's got some daggone songs that if they don't hit you right to your core, like, to me, like, that's right up there with like Southeastern, like with some depthness of the lyrics. Like, it's so, I don't know, just real and raw, you know. But that's my take on music. Like, I don't find myself listening to the radio and mainstream stuff a lot, but it's not because everything there I think is terrible. You know what I mean?
No, I agree with you, because that's always been like me, Andy, and Kyle's thing too, which is why with this show we've always kind of not really fit a lane necessarily, because we're not Taste of Country, right? Where everything's stamped and approved from every mainstream artist, but we're also not like some of our like friends in the podcasting community that it's only, you know, independent music and anything from the mainstream sucks. It's like, if we like it, we're going to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And there's some stuff in the mainstream that we like that we've talked about. And then there's some stuff that, you know, most of our friends haven't ever heard of that we talk about. It's just like, we're not mainstream enough for the mainstream, and we're not independent enough for the independent sometimes.
I feel like that's my whole music career. I've just been falling in the cracks somewhere. Like, you know what I mean? But like, I want to live in a world where it's okay to say that that Tim McGraw song, like Cowboy and Me, that's a great song. And in the same sentence, say, you know, American Aquarium is a great band. Like, I want to live in that world. You know, those are vastly different things, but in their own right, like, it's really good. good. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Well, thank you for justifying our entire existence.
Exactly. Because I love American Aquarium, but anybody who listens to early 2000s, late 90s Tim McGraw and doesn't say he has some bangers in there, like they're just lying to themselves because
yeah,
it definitely
absolutely.
had a run there.
Red Ragtop. If you can listen to that and not think that that's an awesome song, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Because they literally talked about something that is so divisive.
Yeah.
And put it on the radio, and it's awesome.
And they put it on the radio in 2004.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, man, that's so good. It's so good.
It's fantastic. I don't know about Andy. Andy hates 90s country, though.
I hope I didn't mess you up and just
don't ask Logan to stand up for a few minutes because you justified him so hard.
Kyle's mad because you basically have said my pitch for both Taylor. It's funny you brought up Taylor Swift. That's been my pitch for Taylor Swift and John Mayer for years. And Kyle gives me so much shit about it. So having someone else like say exactly what I say, he's like, oh my gosh. He goes, here it is.
Yeah, God. You just justified Logan so hard.
you know, I think
I'm not going to disagree with you, but yeah, I just don't like to see Logan with that smug ass grin on his face the whole time you were talking.
You know, right now, I think in the world and the music climate is as good as it's been. And I think a lot of it is because streaming, people don't have to listen to the radio. And I think what's happened is you've got people like Zach Bryan. If this was 5 years ago, it wouldn't have worked out.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
Just that short of a time. But because of streaming and things, you're starting to get like it was like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. You had artists that got popular and then record labels went and got the people that were popular. Whereas since probably about 2000, it's all been about let's get people and we're going to manufacture a product and sell because we think that's what they'll like. So like we're in such a good place right now. My only wish is that I was 20 years old right now, just getting going. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh yeah.
Well, even Zach Bryan's war with Ticketmaster couldn't have happened 20 years ago.
No,
the label would have slapped him down and said no.
Yeah.
We got to deal with Ticketmaster, and you can't say that.
Yeah. Well, it's such a better place now just to be a true artist and just do your thing and to get it out there. And if you can figure out a way to get it out there, it's a game of numbers, right?
Yep.
If you can make it work, it's great. I haven't figured out how to make it work yet, but there's tons of people that have. And like, I'm just so glad that, I get to live in a world as a listener, that there's so much great music at my fingertips,
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things we've talked to a lot of artists on here about, like it's the pros and cons of the streaming era, right? Like people are definitely not getting the payouts they used to when you had to buy physical albums, but at the same time, there are a lot of artists that are having a career now and the ability to tour because of access that probably would have been much more difficult, 25 years ago, to be able to I guess have that happen as quickly as like a Zach Bryan has.
I think the only real people that should be able to complain are the Taylor Swifts, because they're the only people I think that can be negatively impacted because
right.
They would have been selling millions anyway. But like somebody like me, like we're doing, I don't know, 800,000 to 1 million streams a year, like if this was 15 years ago when you had to have a label to get any like we just wouldn't have any music out there.
Right.
No one would be listening to our music. You know what I mean? So yeah, it might be true that we don't get paid as much for those streams and listens, but we wouldn't have those listens at all. You know?
I mean, it's kind of like even on our end too, doing a podcast. Back in those days, we wouldn't have the ability to do this because it was the radio or nothing, right? Whereas like we're able to DIY this thing and put it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, whereas previous era, we would just be sitting around like we did back in college and just be talking about this over a couple cold beers and no one would be able to hear the show.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. So, I mean, I think for the independent folks, I think the ability to do this, the ability to have Spotify and Apple Music is such a huge plus. The only people I think that it really hurts are the people that have always been able to be the gatekeepers for things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think, especially now in the world we live in, I think it's super important that the average person can go out and like do something that people will see or hear, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I know everybody's talked about it, but Oliver Anthony, like, he went from zero to hero in like 24 hours.
Right.
Yeah, he did.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was
It
wild
doesn't
how
matter
fast
what
that
you
blew
think
up.
about. Yeah, it doesn't matter what you think about the music. All that matters is that could not have happened, you know,
Mhm.
what, 3 years ago,
No.
4 years.
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. And the
now
only
in the world that in any moment everything can change.
yeah,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the only contrarian view I would have with what you said is you're only the gatekeeper for so long.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, here's the thing. Business people are business people.
Yep.
They will figure out a way, right?
Yep.
I mean, think about this. The only reason it's not so controlled now is because it's still new, but eventually people are going to figure out how to make sure that the majority of people are listening to what they want them to listen to. They just
they
haven't
can.
not yet. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that's the circle, right?
I mean, you can already kind of see where they're figuring it out, where they plug certain artists on YouTube and
Yeah.
they put a lot of money behind them and they make sure they're promoted on YouTube and certain other things. But you can't make a shit how do I put it? You can't make a shit doesn't sell, you know. If it's shit, it doesn't sell.
Yeah.
Because people
And
aren't
I
going to
think
listen to it.
the biggest difference is too, like, yes, the labels have figured out at this point, like, playlist manipulation with Spotify and everything, where they can push the artists they want to push. But the difference is, for now versus back then, is the artists that are not having the playlist manipulation can still blow up and become popular. Whereas back then it was strictly just whatever the label pushed. So I think that, like, they'll figure it out how to make money, because they always will and they always have, but they're still like, you know, the internet's made it possible.
Yeah. And I mean, think about it, you know, back in the day, right? If there's one radio station in town and you drive your truck, what are you going to listen to? You're going to listen to whatever that radio station plays, right? Okay. And the second there comes 2 or 3 radio stations in town, now you can change the station. And now we live in a world where there's thousands, right? Of radio stations. You know, and they'll get better at trying to make sure you land where they want you to, but it's not as easy to control now, you know. Most of the 2000s, you know, streaming was starting to take off and build, but most of it, every town has 3 radio stations. You have a rap station, a mainstream country station, and a pop station, right?
Yep.
So everybody listened to one of those 3. And then as time has went on, everybody's moved to streaming. And my thing is, and you know why everybody's went to streaming, is because what they wanted to listen to wasn't on the radio stations, and they found outside of that things they liked. You know what I mean? If the radio station had been playing all these things beforehand, I think we'd still be listening to the radio.
Right.
Well, I've told Logan and Andy before, the wildest thing I've ever heard. I live in a town with like 15,000 people. Very small town. Then about a year ago, Something in the Orange came on the mainstream country radio. And I said, we are in, you know, a world-changing moment. This would have never happened 10 years ago.
No.
And I mean, this is on mainstream country radio.
It was on, you're from North Carolina, so you'll know it, 94.7 QDR. Like, it was on QDR. Yeah. Which was it was wild to hear that.
Yeah. And then even it was on a smaller radio station, the local Roanoke Rapids station. I mean, it was even on that. I was like, oh boy, we are in for something now.
But we finally hit that. I feel like Zach Bryan was the first person that really pushed everybody over the tipping point to
He
where
broke all the rules.
Okay. And now all of a sudden, like there's people outside of the machine making so much money. We've got to figure out how to get them into the machine, at least even if it's a little bit, until we figure this out. You know what I mean?
You're
because
right,
what your business people can't do is let like they not be a part of what's taken over.
Oh yeah, they can't stand that. Yeah,
but Spotify was a big part of it, because now that I'm thinking about it, 5 years ago when we saw you in Fuquay Arena, we actually were talking. You and me were talking about Spotify because it was new, and people were like, "I don't know if this streaming thing's going to be good." I remember you and me were both, I think Spotify is going to be good because it lets people find new stuff. And now here we are 5 years later, and we were right. Spotify was a good thing.
Yeah. And I think Spotify is owned by like a
Swedish.
I was about to say Swedish. Yeah, it's a
Swedish company. I don't know the exact company.
Best thing for it, right?
Yeah.
No way where they can't mess with it too much.
Hey, the Swedes, they do two things really good. They got the music streaming service and their tobacco-less nicotine pouches. So
They make Zen. Is that who it is?
I believe Zen is a Swedish company. Yeah.
Nice. Sponsor us, please, Zen.
Yeah. We've always said a Zen sponsorship would be like the ultimate for us.
Yeah.
but yeah, no, like it's ultimately a good thing because we talked about, I think last episode that, Zach Bryan has kind of been like almost, we were kind of reacting to Grady Smith's YouTube video he did about Zach Bryan. He's been almost like a Nirvana moment. Like what Nirvana was to rock, Zach Bryan kind of is to country. Like even though Zach's like not like hardcore country, he's still country enough. And like the kids have just latched onto him, and it's just been this organic like groundswell of support to where I saw him at the Ritz like in 2021, and there was like 1,500 people there. And now he's going on a stadium tour and has Turnpike Troubadours opening for him. That's nuts for a 2-year turnaround.
Yeah,
It's just crazy.
It's been nuts, man. But it's awesome. It's awesome that someone outside of the norm can go and be that big.
Yeah.
But I would say, I mean, there was a lot of people that that were there before, but I would say the beginning of all the shift, in my eyes, the first place I noticed it was Sturgill Simpson, and then Sturgill brought on Tyler Childers, and then Tyler Childers have brought on Zach Bryan. You know what I mean? I think that's been the progression. With a little bit, I think Sturgill opened like a group of people's eyes that there's more out there, and I think that opened the door for a bunch of these Texas guys that at the time nobody knew in the national level, but then you had all of a sudden like Cody Jinks and Cody Johnson, which, Co Wetzel came out of that, Turnpike. They all went on to be national big deals. And Sturgill found Tyler and, produced his record, and then he did that. And then now all of a sudden, I think Zach Bryan's great, but I think if you didn't have Sturgill and you didn't have Tyler, there wouldn't be a Zach Bryan where he is now.
I agree with that.
That's exactly what we said.
And you wouldn't have any of those if it wasn't for Shooter Jennings, because
right.
Shooter Jennings, I can't tell you all the exact stories. So if there's someone that hears this and is like, Corey is wrong, I understand that. But something in the story goes that Shooter Jennings was having a conversation with some people in Nashville about country singers, and somebody said, if you want to hear a real country singer, you need to go listen to this guy, Sturgill Simpson. So they went down to one of those venues there, and he listened to him. And then like a week later, they were like, let's make a record. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that conversation that Shooter had started this whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yep. And Shooter's gone on to produce some big time records. Like he did the last American Aquarium record. I think he did the last Turnpike record that just came out. Like Shooter's been tapped a lot recently to produce some of these records from these guys. I've been a fan of Shooters for a long time, going back to, what was that record back in the day? Put the O back in country. That was probably the record that got me into Shooter.
Hey, I remember running down 64 at about 95 mile an hour, jamming to Ashley's sitting with me, sitting in the front seat or whatever it is, the 4th of July song.
4th of July, yep.
Yeah.
Andy and I have always said that song just makes you want to speed.
So it's great, man. That's a good record, though. That
was a very good record.
Busted in Boulder County, and
that was like one of the first records I downloaded on my iPod when I got an iPod Touch. And I was just, and I don't even remember why I downloaded it, because it wasn't like I knew anything about Shooter other than he was Waylon's kid. And I was like, I'll give it a shot. And I just was like, I got an iTunes card downloaded, and I was like, this is really good.
Yeah. And the beauty of the whole thing is that Shooter is Waylon's kid. So this whole new outlaw thing is still coming from the original outlaw, like Waylon and Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard and all those guys. did out the gate, when they up and kind of left Nashville and, don't talk outlaw shit, done got out of hand. You know what I mean?
It's funny you bring that up. My 64-year-old soon-to-be father-in-law loves Waylon, Willie, all that. I was like, you ought to check out these folks. And I played them on my Echo in my house when I was fixing it up. And he was like, oh, this shit ain't half bad. What's this guy's name? It was Sturgill and all this. He was like, well, I'll be damned. This sounds pretty damn good. I'm going to have to write this down. How do I find this music?
Yeah.
I was like, I'll tell you how to do it. Yeah, he was like, this is pretty damn good. I like this. I'm all about this.
Oh, yeah. Man, this is so cool. I know, like, you guys said y'all want to do some kind of lightning round, and I totally, took us out in right field, so I apologize.
Oh, no, you're totally good. You're totally good. We've enjoyed the conversation, so no need for apologies. But, yeah, so it's real quick. We like to do, everybody gets one question. We'll ask you a question, just first answer that comes to your mind for it. I'll let Andy start. Kyle, you go second. I'll go third.
All right. Cookout or Whataburger?
Whataburger, man. It's good.
That's a good choice. Yeah.
Spicy ketchup. If it wasn't for spicy ketchup, I'd probably say Cookout.
That is my entire theory on Whataburger. Spicy ketchup is by far the best.
Yes.
My question, if you can have one drink with any historical figure, dead or alive, who do you sit down and have a drink with?
Well, Jesus. Like, what? Who wouldn't? You know what I mean?
Okay, fair enough. Yeah,
I like that answer.
He'd probably have some wine with you. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Well, yeah. Okay. That's a good answer. Yeah, I don't really. Yeah, I've never bothered with that. So yeah, good choice.
Mine is so you have to pick. You're on the road. You're on tour. Van jams. What are 3 artists that you got to play when you're on tour?
Man, I don't think we've ever been out and not played Casualties, American Aquarium, because it naturally, I feel like there's been so many times it fits us so perfect. What else? Here lately, we've been listening to a lot of John Bauman. I really like him. And he's got a lot of cool songs that are real songwriters. So I feel like we're always listening to that, trying to kind of mellow out a little bit. And this one, Blackberry Smoke. I feel like when you've played a really cool show and you've left it and you're on the way back to the hotel and you're super excited, nothing kind of goes with that excitement better than some just straight up Blackberry Smoke rock and roll. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I like it. I like all 3 of those. And speaking of Bauman, you ought to check out his TikTok because he makes when he was promoting some of his songs, he was made a purposefully bad video to promote the song with cue cards. Oh, it was hilarious. It was top tier.
We're gonna be at the and we're gonna be there on October. Yeah,
yeah, it was great. I was like, that guy gets it.
Yeah.
Well, man, we appreciate you.
The Rainmaker.
Yeah. It's hilarious. I saw that and I was rolling laughing when I saw that. I was like, that is, if I were to ever want to do TikToks and it's not my inclination to do that, I would be like, that's how I would do it. It's almost like you're making fun of the platform.
Yeah, I really like John Bauman. So I'll tell you a quick story. Do we have time for a quick story?
Yeah. We got plenty of time.
You were in Lubbock, and beside the Blue Light, there's a venue called the Cactus Theater, and we actually were opening up for Reckless Kelly at the Cactus Theater, and then John Bauman was playing the Blue Light. We normally play the Blue Light. We were only at the Cactus Theater because we were the opening act. And anyway, that show, the Reckless Kelly show, got done probably 10:30. Which means they're just getting cranked up over the Blue Light. So we went next door and hung out, and I really wanted to meet John Bauman because I really like him a lot, like his music. And I think the weird thing in music is when you play music is people don't understand, you kind of fan girl over people too a little bit. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, I waited, there were so many people there, it was sold out, and I waited, and I walked, finally got to walk up to him. I was like, hey man, I really appreciate your music and all this stuff. And I was telling him all these stupid things, and he was like, what's your name? I'm like, my name's Corey Hunt. He was like, do you play music? I'm like, yeah, I do. He's like, I know who you are, man. And I was like,
Uh,
way cool. So like me and him are like Instagram buddies now, and so every now and then he'll like comment or like on something, and it makes me feel it might as well be like George Strait commenting on my stuff. You know what I mean? Like that, it's really cool, and I think he's like a genuinely nice person. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And so like I feel like I've met people before that you think what they're going to be like, and you get there and they're like, it sucks that you met them because they ruined it.
Right.
John Bauman, I feel like the fact that I've met him that one time and like he was super cool, like makes what I think of him so much better. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
I will be a John Bauman fan for the rest of my life. You know, like I will get every record he makes. It doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
That's
I mean, look,
though.
we've had those encounters where some people are really cool and down to earth and some people are not. And like you said, you almost wish you hadn't have met the ones that were not, but the ones when they're really cool and down to earth, or that makes an impact. Like they took the time to just like talk to us and everything. It's awesome.
Yeah. And I get it. Like, I mean, I play music, so I understand that sometimes, like, you know, if you've played 22 nights in the row, like you don't feel great every night. But like, I just think there's, you know, I've always tried to keep it in my mind. Like, it doesn't matter how you feel. Like, people pay to come see you. Like, like just do the best you can at, you know, at trying to feel better, even if you feel bad. Like, not letting the way you feel control the way you act. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'll say there's probably people that aren't very good at that, and I'm sure there's people, and I've probably ran into people that I got a bad impression of that are probably 90% of the time awesome to be around. I just hit them on bad. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, I think as a musician, like that's why it's so important. Like it's hard. You can't really have an off night, you know?
Yeah, because then, you know, that's how sometimes rumors will get started with fans is like they catch you on the one night that you're maybe not like really nice or you're just dog tired for some reason. And then people get to talking like that. And, you know, with the internet, things can, as we talked about with music, the downside is bad things can blow up that may not necessarily be true. So, well, man, we appreciate you taking time to come on. This has been one of my favorite interviews we've done. So,
well, thank you guys so much for including me. Like, this has been great.
Awesome, bro.
And thank you guys for doing this. Like we talked about, and we won't talk about it again, but like what you guys are doing is just as important to the scene as like what I'm doing. You know what I mean? It takes so many different roles to make something work and be productive. You know what I mean? So thank you guys so much for this, you know, and hopefully, you know, one day we can have this conversation and like we're doing a Country and Cold Cans concert and there's like 30,000 people there and we're playing on it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
We're all millionaires.
That would be the dream, right?
We're all millionaires.
Millionaires get to do what you love, right?
That's
Exactly.
Right. Hey, they say if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life.
Exactly.
So that's what they say. We're gonna find out though, hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Hey,
We better
fingers
do
crossed.
because Corey's gonna get old quick. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Hey, we're right behind you.
Yeah. You got a fan club here, buddy.
Man, I really appreciate you guys. Anytime, reach out. Like I think I don't know who I talked to on Twitter, but I'm terrible at Twitter. So you got my phone number?
Yeah, that was me. Yeah,
Instagram me, whatever.
Yeah, man, for sure. Thanks again. Well, for this episode of Country and Cold Cans, I'm Logan, sitting there with trucker Andy Kyle and our special guest this week, Corey Hunt. See you next time.